The first time I heard my own voice whispering from the dark. I honestly thought I was dreaming. You have to understand something first. Though, I wasn't out there looking for ghosts or abandoned cult sites or any of that stuff people online love making videos about. I'm a writer. Or, I was trying to be one. Mostly small horror stories nobody read except a few insomniacs on Reddit and one loyal friend who kept telling me my stories were too depressing to read before bed. About a year ago, I got this deadline from a tiny publishing company in Portland. And I figured the only way I'd ever finish the manuscript was if I disappeared somewhere with no distractions. No traffic outside my apartment. No neighbors yelling at each other through paper-thin walls. No phone buzzing every 6 seconds. So I rented this old cabin up in the mountains of Montana. And honestly, at first it felt perfect. Miles of pine trees covered in snow. No signal. No cars. Just this old wooden place sitting alone near the woods like somebody had forgotten it existed. The kind of cabin with creaking floorboards, weak yellow lights, and a stone fireplace that popped so loud at night it sounded like someone knocking from inside the walls. My friend joked before I left. You know, writers in isolated cabins always die first in movies, right? I laughed it off. Told him the scariest thing I'd probably deal with was frozen pipes, a bear outside the trash cans, or Wi-Fi so bad I'd have to stare at my own thoughts for once. And weirdly, I like the silence out there. Back in the city, silence almost never happens. There's always sirens, people, traffic, televisions through apartment walls. But out there, nothing. Just snow falling and trees moving in the wind. Still, after the second night, I started noticing something about that cabin that bothered me in a way I couldn't explain. It was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, more like the woods were holding their breath. The first 2 nights passed quietly after that. I wrote for hours beside the fireplace, drank burnt coffee that tasted like dirt, and listened to snow hitting the windows while the wind pushed against the cabin walls. I actually started thinking maybe the trip was fixing me a little. I was sleeping better, writing better, thinking clearer. Then the third night came. I woke up suddenly around 3 in the morning with this feeling that somebody else was inside the room. Not movement, not footsteps, just presence. The fire had died down to red embers, and the whole cabin was dark except for moonlight coming through the window. That's when I heard whispering from the corner near the hallway. At first I couldn't make out the words. Then my stomach dropped, because the voice was mine. Same tone, same breathing, same little crack in my throat when I'm tired. And it was saying things nobody else should have known. My sister's nickname before she died when we were kids. The exact apology I whispered to my ex the night she packed her bags and left my apartment. Word for word. I froze. I remember reaching for the bedside lamp so fast I nearly knocked it over. The second the light came on, silence. Nothing there. No movement. No sound. I actually laughed for a second, trying to calm myself down. Told myself it was stress, sleep paralysis, isolation, too much caffeine, and not enough sleep. But the moment I switched the lamp off again, the whispering came back. Closer this time. Have you ever heard something so wrong your brain refuses to process it at first? Because that's exactly what it felt like. And then I made the mistake of looking toward the hallway mirror. I saw myself standing behind me, smiling, but the eyes, they were completely black. After that night, things inside the cabin changed fast. Every evening it got closer. At first I only saw it in mirrors for a second at a time, standing behind door frames peeking from the hallway, watching from rooms I knew were empty. But after a while it stopped hiding very well. And the worst part? It was learning me. The first time I heard it copy my laugh, it sounded wrong. Too slow. Like somebody trying to imitate human behavior after only hearing it once. But night after night it improved. Sometimes I'd say something out loud while writing, and hours later, I'd hear my own voice repeating the same sentence somewhere deeper in the cabin. Exactly the same way I said it. The cabin itself started feeling dead. The air turned freezing cold, even with a fire going. Frost formed on the inside of the windows. I found footprints circling the cabin every morning, even though fresh snow covered everything else untouched for miles. And the mirrors. God, sometimes my reflection would move half a second before I did. That's when I stopped looking at them completely. Then one morning I woke up on the couch beside the fireplace and saw a pair of muddy boots drying near the fire. I just stared at them because I hadn't stepped outside in 2 days. I remember sitting there asking myself something I still hate thinking about now. What if it already switched places with me? What if I was the copy and didn't even know it yet? Then one night, while I was pretending to sleep, I heard footsteps stop at my bedroom door, and my own voice whispered from the darkness, "You're harder to become than the others." The final night started with the power going out. 1 second the cabin lights were humming softly, and the next, everything disappeared into darkness while the blizzard outside slammed against the walls hard enough to shake the windows. I remember grabbing the flashlight beside the couch, and that's when I saw him, sitting calmly in my chair near the fireplace. Me, not the black-eyed thing from the mirror anymore, not some distorted shape hiding in shadows. This looked exactly like me now. Same face, same tired expression, same nervous habit of rubbing my thumb against my palm. Even the voice was perfect. Soft, friendly, familiar. And hearing myself talk to me like that did something to my brain I can't explain. It smiled and said, "You look exhausted." That's when I realized it hadn't been haunting me. It had been rehearsing. I panicked and ran for the front door, but suddenly I was outside in the snow, barefoot, freezing so hard my lungs hurt. I don't even remember opening the door. 1 second I was inside, the next I was standing knee-deep in snow. Then the cabin door slammed shut. I stumbled to the window and looked inside, and I saw myself walking around the cabin calmly, collecting my notebook, my jacket, my keys, like I was getting ready to leave. I turned toward the window and smiled at me using my exact mannerisms, even the little awkward wave I always do without thinking. Then it mouthed the last thing I ever heard inside that cabin. "Don't worry, I'll tell better stories now." They found me 3 days later wandering near a highway outside Missoula, half frozen and barely able to talk. Nobody believed my story. The cabin owner swore I never rented the place alone, and the security footage from a gas station nearby only showed one person arriving at the mountain road and one person leaving. Me. At least that's what they said. But ever since then, people close to me keep mentioning little things. My friend says my voice sounds slightly off sometimes. My ex told me I smile at the wrong moments now. And every once in a while, mirrors lag behind me for half a second. So honestly, I still don't know if I escaped that cabin, or if I'm the thing that walked out. And if you heard your own voice calling to you from the dark, would you answer it? Tell me what you think was living in that cabin. And subscribe for more victim-told horror stories that should have stayed buried. I used to think people exaggerated grief, not in a cruel way. I just never understood how losing someone could actually change the air around you. Like the world itself starts feeling off. I worked construction most of my life out in Idaho and Montana. Long hours, loud equipment, busted knuckles. Guys making stupid jokes all day to get through freezing mornings. Most of the men I worked with believed every problem on earth could be fixed with duct tape, coffee, or whiskey. I was pretty much the same way. Ghost stories were just campfire garbage to me. Something people made up because the woods get too quiet at night. After my mother's funeral, though, I couldn't stay around people anymore. Everybody kept looking at me with those careful eyes like I was going to collapse in front of them. My aunt kept trying to cook for me every hour. My cousins wouldn't stop checking my phone location. I just wanted silence. So I drove up to my uncle's old hunting cabin deep in rural Montana near this tiny forgotten town called Alder Creek. Barely anybody lived there anymore. Half the roads weren't even marked. My uncle used to laugh and say the cabin was so isolated even ghosts would need directions to find it. Back then I thought that was funny. The place sat surrounded by endless pine trees, miles from a nearest gas station. Snow had just started falling when I got there. The generator only worked when it felt like cooperating, and the walls creaked all night like somebody slowly walking from room to room. The first call came at exactly 3:07 in the morning from my dead mother's phone. I remember just staring at the screen for a few seconds, not even breathing. Her number was still saved in my phone under Mom. Same picture, same ringtone. For a second, my brain tried explaining it away. Maybe my aunt had her phone, maybe somebody accidentally called me. Maybe the signal out there was messing with the display. But the ringing kept going, and I answered it. At first, all I heard was static, this low crackling sound like somebody standing out in a snowstorm. Then I heard breathing, weak, shaky, and then my mother's voice. Baby, I nearly dropped the phone. She sounded exhausted, cold, like her teeth were chattering while she talked. Please, she whispered. I'm cold. Let me in. I kept telling myself it couldn't be her. I watched them lower her coffin into the ground 3 days earlier. I stood there throwing dirt onto it with my own hands. But hearing her voice like that, exactly the way she used to sound when she was sick, it did something to me. Then she said something that made my stomach lock up. Open the cellar door. The cabin didn't even have a front porch, just this old wooden cellar entrance beneath the cabin itself. My uncle used it years ago for canned food and hunting gear. I hadn't even looked inside since arriving. I don't fully remember grabbing a lantern. I just remember walking outside into the snow while still holding the phone against my ear. The wind had completely died. No animals, no trees moving, nothing. The cellar doors were already cracked open. I swear I never touched them before that moment. I pulled them wider and lifted the lantern toward the darkness below. Nothing, just dirt, rotting wood, blackness. Then I heard it, something moving slowly underneath the cabin, not crawling, dragging. And whatever it was, it sounded too heavy to be an animal and too wet to be human. After that first night, the calls never stopped. Every single morning at 3:07, my phone rang. And every night the voice sounded closer. At first it still sounded like my mother. Soft, gentle, asking if I was eating enough. Asking if I remembered little things from when I was a kid. Memories nobody else alive should have known. The time I broke my arm falling out of a pine tree behind our old apartment. The sweater I wore to her last birthday dinner. Even what I was wearing inside the cabin while she spoke to me. Still wearing those old work boots, she whispered one night. You always leave mud by the door. I looked down and nearly got sick. There was fresh mud across the cabin floor. Not mine. I started trying to explain everything away. Grief, isolation, bad sleep, too much whiskey. I drank almost every night, just trying to knock myself unconscious before 3:07 came around. But it didn't help, because the voice kept changing. Sometimes her words stretched too long. Sometimes there was this deep, rattling sound underneath her breathing, like another voice trying to push its way through hers. And every now and then, right beneath her sentences, I'd hear something growl. Low, wet, hungry. Then the cabin itself started acting wrong. The generator would die for no reason, leaving the whole place black and silent. I'd hear whispering under the floorboards while laying in bed. Slow scratching noises circled the cabin walls at night, like fingernails dragging across wood. By the sixth morning, I woke up freezing cold with dirt packed beneath my fingernails, and hanging directly above my bed from the rafters was my mother's favorite necklace, swinging slowly back and forth, covered in fresh blood. Blood that wasn't mine. That was the moment I decided I was leaving. I didn't care if there was a blizzard outside or if the roads were dangerous. I threw my bag together before sunset and ran out to the truck, while snow hammered through the trees hard enough to erase the path behind me. The engine wouldn't start. Not even a sound. The battery had been completely drained. And right as I realized that, the cabin phone rang. 3:07 a.m. I remember staring at it while something moved slowly beneath the floorboards under my boots. Not scratching this time, thumping, like fists hitting the wood from underneath. The caller ID made my blood go cold. It was my number. My own phone was already in my hand, but somehow cabin phone said I was calling myself. I answered it anyway. At first I heard my mother crying. Then the crying bent into something else. The voice became deeper, layered, like several voices speaking through each other at once. And then it said, "I'm already inside, baby." The floor beneath me slammed upward hard enough to shake the walls. I backed into the hallway and saw muddy handprints appearing one by one along the walls toward my bedroom. Fresh, wet, like invisible hands pressing into the wood. Then I heard my mother whisper directly behind me, not through the phone, right beside my ear. I turned around, and there was someone standing in the dark hallway, too tall, arms hanging too long, smiling with my mother's mouth stretched across a face that didn't belong to her, and around its neck was her necklace. I don't remember getting out of that cabin. My memory just stops after I saw that thing standing in the hallway, smiling at me. The Rangers found me almost 2 days later wandering near a frozen highway about 15 miles from Alder Creek. No coat, no gloves, barefoot in the snow with hypothermia, so bad they said I should have died out there. They searched the cabin afterward. No footprints anywhere except mine. But the cellar door beneath the cabin was still hanging open under 6 feet of snow. And the worst part? My mother's real necklace was supposed to be buried with her. Sometimes I still wake up at exactly 3:07 in the morning, and my phone says I missed a call for myself. If you were alone in that cab, would you have answered the first call? Subscribe if you want more true-style cabin horror stories that feel a little too real.